Hello. Have you ever set up a Google form that has checkboxes like this and then got back data that looks like this and wondered, how am I going to process this data that makes sense? Well, you're not alone. This is a common issue. And it is especially troubling if you have um, a situation where you have, many checkbox options in one question, and then, somebody can check many options. Then you get this data back, and you're like, well, how do I process this in a way that makes sense and can allow me to get back valuable data really quickly? Well, I'm going to walk you through a way that can help you take this data and turn it into something that looks like this. So here we have, you have a teacher, a set of teachers, their school, and then across the top here are all the choices that they could have picked from. So they could teach English, math, social studies, Phi-Ed, art, and music. And you can see, for instance, that Tina works at Harding and she teaches. Now, this is fictitious. No teacher would teach all these, but just hang with me. She teaches English. She doesn't teach math. She teaches social studies. She doesn't teach Phi-Ed. She teaches art and she doesn't teach music. So she checked that she teaches these classes, but not these. And if we go back to the raw data, here's that raw data. Here's Tina. She teaches at Harding, and she checked that she teaches English, social studies, and art. Notice that she didn't check that she teaches math, Phi-Ed, and music. So how did we make that happen? How did we make it so that when she checked these boxes, the data flowed through to yes here and blank here? Well, that's what this tutorial is going to be all about. I'm going to show you how to take the data and make it kind of flow all the way through here. And it's a couple step process, but it's not hard. And I'll show you how to set that up right now. So let's start from here. You have, well, let's start from here. You have your survey, and here's your survey. And so you can, let's click on preview, and so we can enter a new name. So let's enter James, who works at Central, and let's say James teaches English, math, and art. And you click submit. Boom, we just entered another piece. And then you know that if you go to responses, you can go to your view responses in Sheets. Now I've already set that up, so it's going to bring me right to my Sheets. If you haven't done that already, you can just click on create a new sheet, and it'll bring you right here. Okay, so now if you haven't done this before, you're only going to have form responses 1, and you're going to have like one response in, maybe one or two if you've added one or two responses. I would recommend that you add a couple responses. So go back to here, go to responses and add a couple dummy data responses in so that um, you have a few responses to play with here as we build this out. So as you can see, I have 9 responses here, and I just played around with the different combination of responses. Okay, so our next step, this is going to be a kind of a two-part process. And I'm going to walk you through step by step of how to set this up. So the next step uh, you're, you're going to create a class view worksheet. And that class view worksheet is going to look like this. And here, and again, I'm going to walk you through this, but here we're going to pull over the data, and then we're going to split out this data based on whether they've taught these classes or not. And we're going to use some formulas to do that. So that's kind of step one. And then step two, we're going to start to create out our filtered list based off of the particular schools. So here you can see they're all the schools are here. Harding, Central, Johnson. But here we're starting to break it out by schools. So step one is to get their classes, uh, you know, split out. And then step two is to split them up by schools. So, but you don't have these. We're going to create these right now. So just bear with me. So step one, let's create a new worksheet. And let's call this worksheet class view of teachers. Okay, so what we're going to do is we got to pull the data in from here into this class view of teachers. To do that, first step is we're going to name this data. We call it a named range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these columns. So I selected all of my columns A through D. Now in your real data, you're going to have more than these columns, but I'm just selecting these columns A through D. I'm going to go to data, then named ranges, and I'm going to call this something like teacher data. Now I'm going to call this teacher data 2 because I already have teacher data. I'm already using this teacher data, so I'm going to call this teacher data 2. And so essentially what I've done is I've just named all of these columns of data. I've named that. So now when I come over here and I pull over this data, I'm gonna pull over this data by the named range, and I'm going to do that with a function called query. So equals query open parentheses teacher data 2. So I'm going to query teacher data 2, comma, quotation marks, and now I'm going to write a select statement. So I'm going to say select. Now I'm going to say the columns that I want to pull over. So I know that I want to pull over. I don't need this timestamp, right? So I don't need this column, but I need columns B, C, and D. So inside of these parentheses, I'm going to say B, comma, C, comma, D. Then outside of the parentheses, I'm going to say comma and 1 because I have headers here. So I have a header row and I'm indicating that. And if you notice, what did I do? I pulled over all of that data. Now, what's tricky is this query statement is a copy of this data. So I can't go in here and edit this. If I come in here and start typing, it breaks this query and it makes it invalid. So it's just a copy. We got to remember that. Um, I can do it outside of here, but if I do it in this area here, it's going to break that query. This is just a copy. But what's nice about this is it's dynamic in the sense that if I add somebody like Trayvon at Central, and Trayvon teaches these classes, you will see that in my class view of teachers, Trayvon pops up. So he obviously pops up in my form response 1. That's obvious because that's exactly where it goes from the survey. But it also pops up um, in my query statement. So great. Now, what we need to do is we need to over here, we need to type in all of the available options that could be chosen by the teachers. And so what I would typically do is come here and I would say English, Math, Social Studies, Phy-Ed, Art, and Music. And you need to have them spelled exactly as they're going to be spelled here. So English, Math, Social Studies, Phy-Ed, Art, and Music. So English, Math, Social Studies, Art, Music. I think that was it. English, Math, Social Studies, Phy-Ed, Art, Music. English, Math, Social Studies. Oop, I forgot Phy-Ed. I want to stress that these need to be spelled exactly as they are spelled in your survey, because what we're going to do right now is we're going to set up an equation that relies on the fact that this is spelled exactly as it's going to be spelled in here. And if that's off, then this whole thing is going to be off. So just ensure that these are spelled correctly. And here it's easy. English, English. That's easy. But if you could have some complicated stuff going on here, and so just ensure that the spellings are correct. Okay, so the equation that we're going to be writing is a find equation, and I'm gonna just show you this. So the find equation is here, and this is a bit of a beast of an equation. Let's see. Okay, so it's gonna take us a little bit to digest this with you, but I think we can do this together. So we'll build this together. So equals find. Now what do we want to find? We want to find this word English. And where do we want to find it? We want to find it in this cell right here. And I think that's it. No, that's not it. Give me 1 second. There's one more. So find that in there and then 1. Okay, that was close. Okay, there it is. So, okay, here's how you write the find function. So we're going to say equals find. Okay, what are we, the first parameter that we're going to pass into this function is what do we want to find? Well, we want to find this word English, comma, where do we want to find it? We want to find it in this cell right here. So we're going to select that, comma, and then we have to pass in this value of 1. I think this is like, it's a, um, it's kind of complicated, but I think it refers to whether we want a, like an exact match, and then we're going to close that parentheses. Now, if it finds it, it's going to it's going to give us a value of 1. So we're going to hit enter. Now, obviously it found it. So that's great. Last thing we need to do is we need to put dollar signs around the D here. And I'll show you why in just a second. So put dollar signs around the D. Now what we can do is we can drag that D all the way down. Now you can see that everybody teaches English here. So that's great. Okay, so what we want to do is let's delete that from there. Next step is what we want to do is we want to write an array function around this. So we're going to write array formula, and we're going to put that around here. And then we're going to say enter. And so what the array formula is going to do is the array formula is going to look down this entire row for us, so we don't have to write this formula all the way down, because new lines of records are going to come in here, and we want this array formula to um, multiply this going down. The only thing we need to do is we need to say :C. So it's going to copy this all the way down. Now that's great. See how it did that? It copied this formula all the way down. The only problem is it did it all the way down even when we didn't want it to, and that's not great because now we have this ugly value statement going all the way down. And the way to correct that is just inside of the array formula, we're going to say if error, there it is. So I'll do that slower. Let me do that slower. So inside of the array formula, just inside of the array formula, we're going to type if error, then we're going to open a parentheses, and at the very end, we're going to close the parentheses. So I'll pause that for a second. So array formula, and then if error, and then we're going to close the parentheses. And all that does is it just gets rid of all these error cells down here. Okay. But what we want is we want this to say yes, not not 1. And so what we need to do is in here we need to say if this find is greater than 0, so we need to say, so if inside of this error, we say if this find value is greater than 0, then yes. Otherwise, we're going to have it be blank. And so there you go. That's how we convert that. So that's the formula right there. It's a little complicated to get to, but once you get that formula, now it's game over. Now it's so easy because all we need to do, notice that that formula is just in one cell. All we need to do is copy that formula, paste it here. Notice that it's here, but nothing's happening. That's because we just need to change the cell reference. Notice how when we copied it over, it shifted over one. So we need to change the cell reference here. We want this cell reference to be looking in E, and this cell reference to be looking in in C. So here we can copy, paste, and again, we want this to be looking in F and C and C. And again, we're going to copy, paste, and here we're going to be looking in C. Nope, here we're going to be looking in G and C and C. Copy and paste. Here we're going to be looking in H and C, and copy and paste. And here we're going to be looking in I and C and C. And that works. And we can just spot check to verify. So Chris teaches English, Social Studies, and Art. English, Social Studies, and Art. Whereas Trayvon teaches, Belinda teaches English, Math, Art, and Music. English, Math, Art, and Music. Perfect. Okay, but now we want to, so we've done that, but now we want to pull over and create this class view by school. So now we want to create a filtered view, so we're only looking at teachers that teach at a particular school. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new worksheet, and let's call this worksheet class view by school 2. I already have one here, so just hang with me. And we're going to say, again, this is just going to be a simple query statement, but what we need to do is we need to name this range again. So again, I'm going to select all the columns. Notice to select columns, I'm clicking on the A. I'm not selecting the data. This is the data. I'm not selecting the data. I'm selecting the columns. I'm going to select all the columns. I'm going to go to Data, Named Ranges, and I'm going to call this Parsed Teacher Data 2. Parsed Teacher Data 2. I'm going to come to my class view. I'm going to set up a new query. I'm going to say parsed teacher data 2. Now here's my select statement. I'm going to say select. And what do I want to select? I want to select A, B, D through I. A, B, D through I. So I come here, I say select A, B, D, E, F, G, H, I. Now here's where it gets fun. Where B equals single quotes, let's say Harding, comma 1. Uh, so, and then I forgot to close the parentheses here. So let's go over this. Query, we're querying this data set that I named, and then we created a select statement. Select these columns. Notice that I left off this column C because we don't need it. We don't need this anymore. We're just using this as a helper column to get to here. So we can leave that off. And then here's that filter where B, notice that column B is this school column, where B equals whatever school I want, Harding. And then we have headers, so I put 1 because this has a header row. So now this is your filtered list. You could create more tabs. This may be, you may even want to do this. This could be your Harding tab. And you could share this just to your Harding school. And so if we come back to your survey, you could say, I don't know, Bow Harding, and let's say she teaches, everybody teaches English. Let's say she teaches social studies, art, and music. Submit, and then we come here. Look at, she shows up in our Harding worksheet, Bow Harding, social studies, art, and music. So that's how you create a parsed list of using some different formulas to kind of parse out a checkbox list. Nice work.